This is, I think, a really good time, to assess and ask those questions that, I would ask students in high school, leave it hanging, let them think about these things. And for all of us, we're faced with these questions, right? We shouldn't have to be faced with these questions. We should be just friggin' left alone rather than having to contribute to this cesspool called the state. And it's not contribution either. But with that stated, let's do something fun. Let's switch out of this and move into Wordsmith Wednesday. I want to talk to you a little bit about somebody that I admire. An incredible work ethic on this person, probably has more pseudonyms than almost any other author I've ever heard of, and has an amazing story from his own background where he overcame a lot. His name is Dean Koontz. So it's time for Wordsmith Wednesday. We're going to switch over into former Star Trek writing fellow land, and we're going to go with the Outer Limits intro from our friend, the Control Voice.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
All right. Yeah. And don't forget, if you've got ideas for authors you'd like for us to explore, short stories you'd like for us to read, you let us know. I've got a short story that I am going to be reading by Dean Koontz on Friday, and I might even be reading a couple stories by Dean Koontz, but I want to give you some background information about a very, very popular author, of course, one of the biggest sellers of the early part of the 21st century and the 1990s, Dean Koontz, who worked under at least 7 different pseudonyms, I think, also writing romance novels under a woman's name, all sorts of stuff, Dean Koontz. So I want to give you some background. He's a Pennsylvania guy, grew up in hard Scrabble arrangements, and we're going to go over now to the folks at Fantastic Fiction, show you some background information, and I want to tell you an interesting story. Some of you may have already heard this story, but here we have Dean Koontz. This is after he got the hair plugs and stuff. And you can see here, a.k.a. W.H. Allen, David Axton, Gerda Ann Sarah, Brian Coffey, Deanna Dwyer, K.R. Dwyer, John Hill, Lee Nichols, Anthony North, Richard Page, Owen West, and Aaron Wolfe. And as they write at Fantastic Fiction, acknowledged as America's most popular suspense novelist by Rolling Stone and as one of today's most celebrated and successful writers, Dean Koontz has earned the devotion of millions of readers around the world and the praise of critics everywhere for tales of character, mystery, and adventure that strike to the core of what it means to be human. Pretty well phrased there. Dean Koontz lives in Southern California with his wife, of course, grew up on the East Coast. His wife's name is Gerda. They have a golden retriever. You've probably seen the pictures on the back of the books. Has had multiple golden retrievers and the enduring spirit of their golden Trixie. And Trixie was very well known for many, many years by many of his fans. They loved Trixie. Now, I want to mention a couple things about Dean Koontz's background. First, I'm going to show you some of the books, okay? Familiarize ourselves with them. Remember, he had a whole series of Frankenstein stories. He had Intensity that was turned into a TV movie. One of the most popular ones when I worked at the bookstore was one of his shorter ones called The Face of Fear. And that's just a straight up adventure story about these people who are trapped in basically an empty high rise with a mad killer, and they have to go outside the high rise and go on the outside of the building to escape from the guy. It's it's wild. So he works trying to get authentic about what these people are experiencing. His phrasing is very, very dynamic. You'll see there, 1973 was his first release, called Blood Risk, The Adventures of a Character Called Tucker, and he wrote as Brian Coffey. So there you go. The first book in the Tucker series, 1973. Classic Futura adventure suspense, total, what do they call that? Pot boiler adventure story, right? We got international suspense, the sort of Alistair MacLean sort of thing going on there, right? Now, this is going to be really hard to find. 4 men waited in the narrow mountain road for the Cadillac carrying 341,890, the biweekly taking of a mafia cell. 4 men who had never failed in a heist before on their 14th operation in 3 years. So I'll say no more. Say no more, Squire. That's Blood Risk by Brian Coffey. Okay. Now, he has a bunch of other ones that also are under the name Brian Coffey, but I want to show you maybe some of the ones you might find more familiar. Okay. So we have the Odd Thomas books. He did a series of stories for young adults for Odd Thomas. So there you go. Odd Thomas right there. The first book called Odd Thomas, of course. And just massive, massive sales. I mean, multi-millionaire, right? He used to go to a lot of the horror conventions. He has this whole Frankenstein Prodigal Son series, co-wrote the first one with Kevin Anderson, wrote the second one with Ed Gordman, then the Odd Thomas graphic novels, so many other ones, right? I mean, he's got so many, just incredible. So all these separate stories. We got this one from 1968. That was actually earlier. I forgot about these. Star Quest, science fiction. The Fall of the Dream Machine, 1969. Fear That Man. Okay. Then we get to some of the more familiar ones there. We got Demon Seed, 1973. That really hit it for him. Night Chills, that was another really popular one. People probably remember the cover of that one. Remember that? 1986. Maybe you were growing up. You read that in high school, right? Okay, maybe you read it after that, number of years afterwards, who knows? But I want to give you some background on the man himself, because there's an amazing story. Let me tell you a little bit about his background. He grew up in the mining areas of Pennsylvania, very, very poor areas of Pennsylvania. So some of the background for him: born July 9th, 1945. And he was born in Everett, Pennsylvania, to Florence and Raymond Koontz. His childhood was marked by hardship, including frequent abuse from his alcoholic father, which profoundly influenced his writing. Now, I'm going to go into that because that's the amazing, amazing character of Dean Koontz. Tell you a little bit more about that. Despite these challenges, Koontz developed a passion for literature early on. He graduated from Bedford High School in 1963 and attended Shepherdsburg State College, where he won a fiction competition sponsored by Atlantic Monthly during his senior year. After graduating in 1967, Koontz worked as an English teacher at Mechanicsburg High School and participated in the Appalachian Poverty Program, which aimed to help underprivileged kids. His first novel, Star Quest, was published in 1968, marking the beginning of his writing career. Throughout the 1970s, he published under various pseudonyms to explore different genres without being typecast. Koontz's novels have sold over 450 million copies worldwide and have been translated into 38 languages. Koontz married his high school girlfriend, Gerda Ann Sarah, in 1966. They've remained together and have shared their lives for many of the fans through social media. And he's recognized as one of America's most popular suspense novelists of every genre, really. Now, when I get to talk about Dean Koontz, I want to put this back on the screen. So we've got Dean right here. Okay, so one of the things I want to mention about Dean Koontz is that story about his parents. He was in an interview with on PBS with Charlie Rose, and Charlie Rose asked him about growing up with in a tough relationship. He says, you know, you were a pretty tough guy. He goes, well, yeah, I guess I had to be tough. I was raised in a household. My dad was psychopathic. He's like, what? And he goes, my dad was a psychopath or a sociopath. And he goes, wait, what? He goes, that, and Charlie Rose says, well, that's a pretty intense thing to say about your father. He goes, no, I'm saying that with all technical precision. My father was clinically diagnosed sociopathic. And he was a drunk. He abused my mom. He was a really difficult man to live with. And he said, you know, it was really hard to take care of him after my mom passed away. He said, you what? He said, yeah. And he said, and Charlie said, now, wait a minute. There's a story about when your mom was ill, isn't there? He goes, yeah, there was. My mother was dying, and she was in the hospital, and she called me into the room and said, there's something I have to tell you about your father. And just as she was going to tell me, my father walked in. And she said, oh, I'll tell you later. But she died, and she never got to tell me. And Charlie Rose said, wow, that's amazing. What do you think she was going to say about your father? He said, well, I think she was going to say that my father was not actually my biological father. Because my parents had been told that they could not have children. And I was a surprise. And he said, and there were experiments about fertility that were going on in the hospital where I was born for a number of years during that period. There were fertility experiments going on at that hospital. He said, wait a minute, didn't you say you took care of your father after your mom died? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you ever find out if he was your biological father? No, I didn't. I said, wait a minute. You took care of your alcoholic, abusive father for years after your mother died, and you never explored to find out whether he really was your father? I said, well, you know, he raised me. For all intents and purposes, he was my dad. So I took care of him. It's wild, huh? Never had any genetic tests done, never found out. Now, I don't know after the fact, this is probably 20 years ago that this interview occurred, but I used to talk to people about this in the bookstore and talk about, you know, Dean Koontz taking care of this man, never knowing if he was really his genetic father, but taking care of him nonetheless. As he struggled to write and you know, make a career, have a wife, and all these things. He took care of his alcoholic, abusive father, who had been clinically diagnosed sociopathic. And he even said he had been in jail numerous times for getting in fights. You know, he was a real tough person. So that's wild, huh? And he never found out. To be left with that as your mother passes away, never finding out, and then never exploring it afterwards. Truly something else. Now, when we join each other on Friday, which will be from Studio 2 in Moscow, I'm going to be reading to you from a new book that I picked up, which is edited by Robert Hoskins. It might be the British actor who was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But it's called of course, the writer of Camilla, who lived right, M.R. James, Clark Ashton Smith, Frederick Brown, Frederick Pohl, Robert Hoskins, of course, he has a story of his own in here, Charles Dickens, Robert W. Chambers, C.L. Moore, Robert Bloch, Manly Wade Wellman, Dean Koontz is in here, Ambrose Bierce, Theodore Sturgeon, and Poole Anderson, as well as a number of others. Now, I almost chose the Poole Anderson story because it's a little bit too long. So I might do it when I have, I'll take less time on the news and I'll do more time doing this short story. It's about 25 pages or so. But this Dean Koontz one is a short one. So I'll read that to you on Friday and maybe give you some more about what's going on in the story transmitter. But there are a number of those. Some people thought that Dean Koontz released too much too quickly or whatever. But there are some really good Dean Koontz stories. Some of his stuff's great. Some of his sci-fi stuff is great. Face of Fear is really good. I think you'll really like a lot of his novels. So, just see what you think. See whatever the story is might appeal to you. Many of you probably already read many of his books. I mean, he's one of the most popular writers in the history of mankind. So what can you do? And a lot of times I pick the more obscure writers, but I wanted to talk about Dean Koontz tonight because I wanted to attract some people to him. I've never really spoken about Dean Koontz before. I got a short story I can share with you. And I thought, that story about what he did to take care of his father really, really is remarkable. Really something else. And like F. Paul Wilson knows Dean Koontz, and I think Tom Monteleone knows him and so on. So they used to see him around at conventions. He doesn't really go to a lot of those now. But interesting man. And if you can find any of those books that he wrote as like Brian Coffey and stuff, some of those are really expensive. They're worth a ton. So there you go. I want to thank again Angie for being there, dropping a message over at X, and Ashley for being there. Thank you so much. Please share the links if you like what we're doing. Remember, sometimes we're in that tug of war with someone on the thumbs up. And if you want to support what we're doing and try to see us help us get to that daytime position where we can do the daytime shows over at YouTube as well, that'll be great. If you want to contribute, you can join up over at the Substack, become one of the paid subscribers over there, and we're going to start supplying short stories to the paid subscribers. I can't wait to do that. And of course, you can contribute over at Rumble as well. And if I've missed any of your comments or anything like that, please let me know. You can contact me on the backside of X. I want to thank everybody for being there. Let's send some Spanish Koontz books to the Jersey ICE prison. That's a great idea for a porch. That actually wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah, and I'll let you know, obviously I'm friends with Ian Freeman, and I texted Bonnie, his wife, about this because I got a gift for my sister, which is one of these really cool weekly or monthly things where they send out a mysterious letter addressed to Watson and Sherlock Holmes, and it's got Victorian stylings to it. And you are essentially the Watson to Holmes, or you're the Holmes, and you're trying to figure out the mystery. And they give you clues and stuff like that. You get a new one every week or every month or something like that from this company. It's a great idea. And they have another one for like Gumshoe Detectives too. So it's sort of like, role-playing game sort of thing, almost like 221B Baker Street, the board game, which I loved. And it's great. And I thought, Ian Freeman is stuck in federal prison for doing nothing wrong. He's a great guy, and he really loves getting stuff sent to him to read and things like that. He loves reading philosophy and everything. He's a really, really well-read man. And I thought, boy, I wonder if Ian would love those things. So I'm interested to see whether or not Bonnie thinks he might like those, because I actually have some extras. They sent me 2 copies, so I'd love to send them out, over to him. That's a great idea, you guys. Thanks for tonight's news update, says Birdhouse, and enjoyed learning more about Dean Koontz. Yeah, it was great. And, as much as Charlie Rose got in trouble for all that weird stuff on PBS, he did some great interviews. And I'd love to give him the benefit of the doubt on the PBS stuff. I don't know. I don't know enough on that, like harassment stuff with women. But anyway, I hate to mention it because I don't really know whether it was all confirmed or not. But it's tough. Again, it's reputational stuff. But the interviews that he's done with people like James Patterson and Dean Koontz, just phenomenal interviews. Great interviews. The one he did with James Patterson was terrific too. Really interesting stuff. And again, amazing work ethics on the part of these people. So, yeah, I think a lot of people have those work ethics and whatever it is, family stuff, doing stuff for family, or, doing stuff in their business, whatever the business is. Tony's got that, you probably have it in your work. David's got it. I try to do it for this and then my writing as well. And then you get hit with that long COVID stuff. That's crazy. By the way, I know someone, and I'm hoping to get him on the show. I texted him today as well, who got over the long COVID stuff. and he's done a couple little podcast segments about that. He's an old friend of mine from the Free State Project. And so I'll tell you about that. Yeah, looking forward to Fiction Friday Birdhouse. Rock on. Guys, I'll leave you to the rest of the evening. I'm going to go get some dinner together. Again, don't forget, the Angela Keaton interview is out there right now over at the Rumble channel. If you can go over, if you like it, please share the links. Please entice people to join us over at Substack. The Substack way to do it is a great way to do it to support what we're doing here. Of course, as you know, I can't be at MRC TV anymore. It's just, was not going to happen. And I think Steve Swan saw that coming a mile away. I think he knew early on up there in Maine, saying, no, they're pro-Zionist. And they let me go with my articles for a while, but they had some changes there. So trying to make it work here and do some other things, and hopefully start some classes for kids as well, and start that publishing company. That'll be cool. So have a great night, everybody.